Hi everyone, glad to be back with you after a brief hiatus due to coronavirus restrictions. I'm Gary Giles. This is the June episode of Let's Talk Miamisburg. Well, a lot has happened since our last episode, and we're going to devote our first segment to reviewing some of the local effects from the statewide restrictions put into place to limit the spread of the virus. Then in our second segment, we're going to provide you with some helpful information for summer regarding the city's property maintenance codes. You'll want to be sure and stay tuned for that discussion. Now, viewers should be aware that our episode here is pre-recorded. As a result, we will be unable to accept questions over the phone. We will, however, be providing you with contact information if you'd like to follow up on our topics. So let's get started. Joining me here for the next several minutes is the mayor of Miamisburg, Michelle Collins, along with city manager Keith Johnson. Michelle and Keith, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gary.
Welcome back to the show. It's been about 6 months, so glad to have you back. Michelle, you were just settling into your first term as mayor when a new virus rocked the globe, including right here in Ohio.
Right.
There's really nothing in the mayor's handbook for that, is there?
There isn't. There isn't. And believe me, I called Mayor Church and reminded him that he left that out of his training session that he gave me.
Sure.
He said, well, you get COVID and I got the mound closure. So, but no, I think I had mentioned last week at the end of City Council that it has been trying, but I would not want to be the mayor anywhere but right here in Miamisburg. With what we're currently going through and experiencing, the citizens have different viewpoints and different opinions on what's going on, but they've really rallied around our small businesses, our restaurants. They've reached out to their neighbors a little bit more. And the experiences and emotions that are being shared right now are really what's making this community even stronger than it already was. So I couldn't be prouder.
Well, it's upended a lot of people's lives, a lot of businesses,
sure has,
et cetera, a lot of people's routines.
Sure has.
So Keith, take us back to mid-March, okay? Make your mindset mid-March. What made you realize that the impacts of COVID-19 were going to reach the local level, and what were some of your initial decisions?
Well, initially the governor's office did a really good job of communicating out to the public, and all of the managers and mayors from around the state tuned in weekly to his broadcast, daily to his updates and broadcast. And out of that, where he issued the state of emergency, that caught our attention. We've not seen a state of emergency issued here in the state in the 27 years that I've been here. And then with that, we just began listening to the daily updates, initially shutting down all non-essential operations. And at that point, we began taking the series of actions that we took at the local level.
Some facilities were closed, and I know there was some uncertainty going back and forth a little bit about golf courses.
Well, and again, initially, our overarching responsibility was to protect the public's health and safety. And the governor's office came out with a recommendation that we close golf courses, which we followed suit. And then a few days later, reevaluated and said that outdoor activities, provided that social distancing can be maintained, they thought were important. So the golf courses were opened back up. And both courses were with some fairly strict guidelines. And then later on, as we got used to understanding how to be safe, we were able to kind of relax those guidelines, and both golf courses are open.
So the issue evolves, and more restrictions are put into place at the state level. And of course that trickles down. What are some of the subsequent actions after initially, a 3-week, I think, was the initial period that they wanted to close some things down? What were some of the subsequent actions that the city of Miamisburg took?
Well, initially we closed all access down to public buildings. Only essential personnel reported into work. We still maintained service provision. We made sure that the employees wore protective coverings, that they practice safe social distancing. We worked remotely when we could. And if you've been watching our last few council meetings, those meetings were remote as well. Again, just trying to make sure that we're using every possible safety measure to keep things safe. Later on, when they began relaxing some of those guidelines, we began working with the business community and then locally with trying to loosen up some of those restrictions and make services more visible for our residents.
Some recreation programs for spring, those were put aside. But the essential services, right? Miamisburg, the utility provider, public safety, none of those experienced any disruptions at all, did they?
Still repaired streets, still mowed grass, still read meters. We were still open to residents. Code enforcement activities continued on. So the average person, other than they should have stayed home and not out, didn't really see a difference or a change as far as their service level. Recreational uses that's different because, again, we were relying on what the governor's office said. And really, for the first few weeks, the recommendation was that we not allow anything to happen in our parks. All league sports, contact sports, cease. Anything involving collections of more than 10 people in a location, cease all of those operations. And then later on, recreational activity type by type, the governor began kind of unleashing at least the ability for us to start those back.
Mayor, describe the support and the input that the elected officials had through this period as it evolved.
They've been wonderful. For me personally, remote meetings and the study sessions have been sort of a challenge. I'm the type of person that likes a face-to-face dialogue with someone. I receive a lot of input from body language. So doing that remotely has been a little bit of a challenge, but our council, they have such an honesty and a respect for each other and the citizens that they have been there to support me, to say, hey, let's look at this or that. And I could not be happier with the support that I've received from council.
Sure.
The recommendation of staff to eliminate water shutoffs and extend the tax filing deadline for citizens is something that council should be very proud of. All these things are inevitable. They certainly never go away. Pushing off that financial burden until people could get a little bit more stable with their job and go back to work from a layoff or receive unemployment. It's something that I think we're all very proud that we were able to do.
These were very difficult decisions that were made that affected a
Absolutely,
lot of people.
yes.
Did you sense that for yourself, including plus council, were supportive of these decisions? Did they come along reluctantly? I mean, how did you sense that they felt about these things?
Well, I can guarantee everyone that council does not make a decision without absolute thought and dialogue throughout that decision-making process. We talk to each other. We listen to key staff. They're very professional. They're very educated. They take the time to study what's put in front of us to give us the information that we need to make the right decision for our citizens. As Keith said earlier, none of these decisions were taken lightly, and ultimately resident safety and health and well-being was put at the top of those decisions. And I tell people, remember, we're citizens too that like to swim and take kids to the park. But we have to say what's best for the common good, and that's how we approach every decision, in my opinion. So.
And to reiterate, as an act of goodwill to the residents, there were no water shutoffs during this period, and I believe that continues, correct?
Yes.
For late payments, and the tax filing deadline was extended from the traditional April 15th to July 15th.
That's correct.
And that's the same deadline for federal and state tax returns, correct? So that's coming up. We want to remind the viewer at home that July 15th, those local returns are due just like your federal return and just like your state return. So that's terrific as well. You're watching Let's Talk Miamisburg, a production of the Miami Valley Communications Council. We're talking about the city of Miamisburg's reactions to the whole coronavirus issue that has impacted the world, really, throughout the course of the spring with Mayor Michelle Collins and City Manager Keith Johnson. Keith, when the state extended its stay-at-home order to May 1st, okay, after that initial 3-week period, it forced some very difficult decisions to be made regarding summer recreation. Describe that for us and tell us what transpired.
Well, and the primary summer activity that we were focused on at the time was the pool.
Sure.
And the reason being that in order to open the pool, we need about a 7 to 8 week time frame to interview, screen people, train them, and get them out there and ready to go. We also knew that there would be additional COVID requirements that these employees would have to be screened by. So we had set somewhat like mid-May as a deadline that we thought that we might be able to get the pool open if the state gave us the go-ahead by May 15th. They didn't do that. And as that deadline, as that time period extended on out, it became clear that the earliest we could possibly open the pool under the best circumstances was mid-July. And given the season was short, we knew that there were a lot of guidelines that we thought might be a little onerous. For instance, the pool capacity would be cut in half. There still would be a 6-foot distancing requirement. We'd have to hire additional staff out there to monitor this. We just didn't think in the best interest of the community that it was necessary for this season to operate the pool, and made a very, very difficult decision to close the pool and join many of our neighbors with that same conclusion.
Boy, how do you restrict your attendance? How do you keep 6 feet distances at a public swimming pool? That's a tough thing on your plate, isn't it?
And we thought about
Yeah.
all of that. So
Sure.
there are a couple of pools in the Dayton area that are going to try to open, but even that, they're only available for 2-hour shifts. So the pools that are opening, you're allowed to schedule a 2-hour period to swim, and then somebody else has to come in. And again, it just, for the public, not fair. It's certainly not, we didn't think it was a good idea for this summer.
And some other things beyond the pool that were affected, traditional summer recreation in not only Miamisburg, but a lot of communities also.
Baseball, day camps.
Sure.
We're still looking at both of those, even though we weren't able to get the regular season in. Again, the orders that we got that allowed us to open those still had criteria in there that we're still trying to get through to figure out how we can have a safe, compact baseball season or softball season and still protect the public. And the same thing with day camps.
Michelle, I know you and council were well aware that these difficult decisions for the whole summer were going to impact a lot of people in the community.
We've gotten, I think the community all in all is aware that how the restrictions were put in place. It would make it very difficult to open the pool and to enjoy it. I mean, you don't go there. You go there to have fun, and with all these restrictions put in place, it was very limiting. You know, how do you keep the restrooms sanitary with people running in and out? But I think council at the end of the day realized that they made the right decision based on the staff input that we were getting, the input from around the region of how those municipalities felt about it also. There are still lots of fun things to do in Miamisburg, and taking, the pool being closed certainly does put a damper on it, but it is something that next year it'll be there.
Sure.
So,
Keith, the state and municipalities have now started the process of reopening slowly but surely, in phases, of course. What does that look like in Miamisburg so far? And is there any way that you can kind of look ahead and tell us what you anticipate happening through the course of the summer? Or is it impossible?
Well, and again, what we've done is slowly open up the government to allow people to come in and get service in person. So the city building is open to the public between 10 and 1, 5 days a week, and by appointment between 1 and 5. We are working with the baseball and softball organization down at Rice Field to try to see if we can set up an agreement to make sure that, again, the health department's guidelines for safe operations are in place. If we can come up with those assurances, we would take that agreement to council, and perhaps they could have a late softball season, baseball season. And day camps, again, we're looking at what the requirements are from the state, as well as some CDC guidelines, again, to make sure that parents that drop their kids off, that they can be sure that we're able to maintain safe guidelines and that those kids are protected as much as we can.
Some levels of government are already starting to react to what they anticipate being major declines in revenue. What does the assessment of the city's budget look like at this point?
And right now, it's a little bit early to tell exactly where things are heading. Our early estimates were it could be as high as a 10% impact on our budget. We have a $20 million budget. That's a $2 million impact on revenue. So we're looking to see, so far through almost half of the year, it looks like that we may fall below that, and that certainly would be great news. If not, council has some tough decisions to do to finish out this year. And then we've already started the budget process for 2021. So it's a challenge for the state of Ohio. It's a challenge for all the county governments, and it certainly is for local governments as well. But we're taking a month at a time, and hopefully those returns, a lot of what drives our services are income tax revenue. So as these businesses either lay people off or furlough people, these have direct impacts on the revenues that we receive.
Well, Mayor, we certainly know a lot more about coronavirus today than we did in mid-March when all this started. What are your final thoughts on what's transpired and where we're looking?
Well, I find everyone as I go out. I'm at restaurants in downtown Miamisburg. I'm at the Riverfront Park in downtown Miamisburg. We had a protest rally this Saturday that went really well. It was organized by a group, and I went down and attended it. And I am so impressed at how respectful people are of whether you have a mask on because you're fearful of the disease, or you're being kind to not want to spread the disease. Everyone is really embracing those protocols, and I appreciate that. The citizens have made my job transitioning into a new mayor through this process so much easier. Sure.
Keith, if any of our viewers want to reach out with follow-up questions to anything we've discussed to reach either the mayor or yourself, how can they do that?
The best way is to email us at manager@cityofmiamisburg.com, and then we'll get them a response back.
Okay, Mayor Michelle Collins, City Manager Keith Johnson joining us here on Let's Talk Miamisburg. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 60-second break now, and when we return, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about code enforcement issues during the summertime in Miamisburg. Stay with us. And hello, welcome back to Let's Talk Miamisburg for the month of June. I'm Gary Giles, and as promised, we're going to switch gears for our second segment. We're going to talk about code enforcement issues in the city of Miamisburg. And joining me here for the second segment are two code enforcement officers with the city. To my immediate left, in the center of your screen, is Garley Parsons. And to the far right of your screen, to my far left, is Ed Schneider. Garley and Ed, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been code enforcement officers in Miamisburg now how long?
Approximately 3 years.
About 3 years. How about
Around
you?
3 years as well.
Okay, and I know you've both been on the program before, so we're glad to have you
Yes.
back.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This is a really good time of year to remind citizens about some of the things to watch for on their property to stay in compliance with local codes. So certainly we appreciate you joining us. Let's start with the growing season, which is well underway. Garley, what are some of the things that homeowners need to stay on top of this time of year?
Well, the most common violation that we come across is grass.
Sure.
And the code says it's got to be under 8 inches. Also would like for the residents to trim back the bushes from the sidewalks and in the alleys so that clear distance, and trees overhanging the street. We have a 12-foot code that you have to have that kind of clearance
So it's, when you say 12 foot, you mean 12 foot off the street,
off
correct?
the street.
Okay.
Yes.
How about things that grow over and above your neighbor's property?
Well,
How is that governed?
you can go right to your property line and you can cut straight up and take that debris, though you have to dispose of it. You can't just throw it back over the fence.
Sure.
So you're allowed to go to your property line and cut that overgrowth.
Okay. But the number one complaint you get is grass related, and you said 8 inches in height.
Yes.
You guys don't drive around my house, do you? Okay. You stay out of my neighborhood.
Oh, you're getting a letter
No,
from
just,
me.
Just kidding. Just kidding. How about the general maintenance of the home itself? I know that can generate some concerns as well.
Yes, we look for gutters that are maybe hanging off or even full of debris. Those need to be cleaned out, chip paint, and just general maintenance of the house to take care of your property, because that just maintains your property value.
Sure. And, that's something that for people, it's consideration for your neighbors, right? Do you feel like when the calls come in that it's really, hey, my neighborhood is looking, a little questionable, can you check it out? Is that kind of the general tone and message that you get?
Typically, people really care about their property.
Right.
And when they call us, it's gotten to the point where I've either talked to my neighbor and they're not responding, or
Sure.
or something like that, and then we get involved and try to show them that keeping your house and your property well maintained helps everybody in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Are some people that you go out and visit with, are they even surprised that a code governs that type of thing? Like you mentioned gutters or something like that. Are they surprised sometimes that?
Sometimes
Yeah.
they are.
Okay.
But it's like I said, it goes with the overall general appeal of the house. Is your gutters, if you have what we call a gutter garden, and you have growth coming out of the garden,
Sure.
and you're not getting the good drainage away from the house if your gutters are full. So
Okay. Ed, along those same lines, trash and debris on a property also need to be controlled, don't they?
Well, yeah, because especially debris. When you start out, people think of debris as just like sticks and stuff like that, but it actually is a lot more than that. And when you have overgrowth and then you just cut it and you leave it there, it does attract more. It harbors more rodents and stuff, which you want to keep them trying to moving along. But also trash, and trash is can be anything from like broken toys to tires, car parts. We're seeing quite a bit.
Sure.
I also kind of lump into it. You want to keep your appliances. Someone puts out a refrigerator or something. Unfortunately, Rumpke's not going to pick it up unless that Freon is removed. So that's something that you need to think about. Also, not only just refrigerators, but air conditioners, freezers, and especially you want to take the doors off of a refrigerator and freezer because we don't want the kids getting in those.
Sure.
Also, other appliances can, your old microwave ovens. Don't leave your old stove on the porch. This kind of stuff that we look at, and So there's a wide variety. It's just if you have a lot of stuff, don't be afraid to call. You can call our office, you can call Public Works, request a bulk pickup. When you do if you're putting any furniture out, make sure that you wrap it, because it needs to be, any cloth stuff, Rumpke requires it to be wrapped, like couches, chairs, mattresses, box springs. They don't mind picking it up. It just needs to be taken care of.
Sure.
There's times that we will come along and say, you need to pick this up, but there's times that we'll actually go out and pick up some stuff at times, because we know it needs to be done.
Sure.
And we're looking at the overall quality of the neighborhood, and we'll do what we need to do to keep everybody's property value up as much as possible.
Code Enforcement Officers Garley Parsons and Ed Schneider joining us here on Let's Talk Miamisburg. This is the time of year that people bring out their RVs and their boats and their trailers often in neighborhoods. What kind of parking limitations are in place for these type of vehicles?
Well, the code specifically states that you can have 2 trailers in your yard.
Okay.
That doesn't mean the front yard. Even though you may park it on your driveway in the front of the house, that's not where it needs to be. It can be beside your house or behind your house. An RV, if you've got it there for 48 hours, no one's going to say anything, because we know you're probably getting ready to go camping, and so you want to get it ready. When you come back, you want to unload it, get it cleaned out. We don't have any problem with that. It's just that when you leave a RV sitting there for months at a time, you do need to either put it into some sort of storage, or, like the code says, you can be beside your house or behind the house. That also goes with driveways and stuff. Now, some people do have a motor coach or like a small motorhome.
Sure.
That's fine too, as long as it's parked on a hard surface, as either concrete or asphalt. And that can be parked next to your house, but it has to be on that hard surface.
Okay. And any questions about those kind of parking guidelines? I know you work with the police department sometimes on these issues. Where can people call and ask those questions? Should they call one of you?
They can call us,
Okay.
and we go out there and look at it. People have called us about parking issues. Unfortunately, parking on the street it's public parking. If it's something that's been sitting for a long time, we will contact our contacts with the police department to ask them to go out and take a look at it. They try to make contact with people and say, look, you need to do something about it, especially if you've got something with flat tires.
Sure.
We need to, maintain your property. Your car is as much your property as your house. So we want to keep it looking good too in the area, move it. And if you have any questions, please give us a call.
Last question, quickly in our last minute, Garley. We've talked before about a financial assistance program for residents regarding the purchase of paint, exterior paint for their house. Is that program still around?
Yes, it is. It's still around. We are partnered with Sherwin-Williams, and we provide, Sherwin-Williams provides up to $500 for people that own their house and live in their house and that are income qualified.
Okay.
So there is a limit to that, but up to $500, and we get a very good discounted rate from Sherwin-Williams. We just come out and do a visual inspection of the property, and then the homeowner's got to submit all the documentation for that, and then we'll.
Quickly, let's give the phone number for your department if anybody wants information.
It's 937-847-6532.
Okay, Garley Parsons and Ed Schneider from the Miamisburg Property Maintenance Code Enforcement area. I'm Gary Giles. Thank you for watching our June episode. We'll see you next on August the 12th. Hope to see you then. So long.